Where do I start with No Place for Bravery? This is very much my kind of thing. I love Souls-likes, top-down 2D pixel art, and hyper-violent fiction. The pitch is great. A father trying to make his family whole and fighting through a series of evocative locales to make it happen. It gives a strong first impression. You're Thorn, a bearded, burly man out with his young daughter to hunt for boar. While hunting, you both witness a decrepit monster in the distance, and suddenly a warlock appears and your daughter is taken from you. This all culminates with an epic boss fight that demanded I get the parry just right. It actually had me pulling from my old muscle memory with fury, and I had a great sense of joy when I finally bested him. And if you like gore, this is a very blasphemous-inspired execution system with unique animations for each enemy. They happen so often that in a long fight it can almost harken back to Doom 2016. From here, I was just so excited about what else the game had to offer. So it pains me to tell you that No Place for Bravery misses the mark by quite a bit. You might look at this and see Hyper Light Drifter or Children of Morta, but there's a lot that this is trying to be. If you're to believe its marketing, it wants to feel like Sekiro with its parry-based combat, but it feels closer to the most recent God of War, and not just because you're traveling around with your boy. The way it colors enemy attacks so you know what is able to be parried feels straight out of that playbook. And unfortunately, so does the lack of enemy variety. Surprisingly, it doesn't pull the difficulty from either of these games. By no means is it easy, but for one that asks you to think of Sekiro, it doesn't feel like it's meeting those heights. There are difficulty options, ranging from story mode to ultra hard, and like Celeste, there are even some settings to let you adjust things more specifically, like how much damage you're taking and giving, how much stamina, and what your parry window is like. This is something I want to see more games doing, but if you're looking for that good old Souls difficulty, I'd recommend the harder setting because normal ended up being a little too easy for my liking. However, before you do that, it's worth noting there's some iffy level design here that kept me from ever truly wanting that difficulty I usually crave. For instance, the far too often, "Good job, you finished the dungeon, now we're gonna have you do it all again in reverse," that felt kinda like padding. Or the wave fights that aren't really hard, just long. Then bosses are few and far between, and none are as interesting as the first, which I think the game agrees with me on. You get a couple of other weapons, but it's mostly simple sword combat, which would be fine if the encounters remained engaging. This brings me to its narrative. Of all the dad games I've played so far, the aforementioned God of War or The Last of Us and Eastward, this has the least pathos. I couldn't be bothered to care about the boy, who sounded like an adult writing a kid, if that makes sense. And Thorn was very hard to vibe with. He kind of stinks, to be honest. I know the game is trying to say something about that, but the dialogue feels stilted and it's swinging for bigger fences than it arguably should. It also implies that your choices matter. I did a second playthrough on story mode where I tried the other options and I didn't see anything considerably different aside from early endings. It's a linear journey without much in the way of secrets, just more so out-of-the-way places that give you a few gold coins. Something I think is important to Souls games is that sense of mystery and exploration. That's missing here. I never could get the dodge figured out quite right, and you don't have a sprint button. Instead, you build up momentum after a few seconds, and then you can run. I think this is neat. But also, just give me a sprint button, because now I just run in a circle for a few seconds before an encounter, and it's practically the same thing. There's honestly a lot that needed ironing out with this. The little stuff could be patched, but the problems here seem bigger than that. Something I liked a lot was the lore notes that litter the world. All of these notes are put in a glossary for reference, and by the end, it's pretty packed. Oh, and you can pet the dogs. I repeat, the dogs are pettable. And I do like the ambient songs that play throughout, many being vocal and percussion based in a way that reminded me of this year's RRR. Have y'all seen that movie? A guy straight up jumps in the air and punches a tiger in the face. Everyone needs to watch it. The game runs reasonably well, but there were some hiccups. In a few gated zones, no enemies would show up. One tutorial I couldn't read all of because the scroll wouldn't work. Enemies using arrows don't necessarily need to be looking at you to hit you. At worst, a boss wouldn't appear and I had to reload the game. I got a good ironic laugh though when one objective came up as "we're missing something," as I waited for a boss that never came. Quitting and restarting fixed almost all of these problems when they came up, and I never lost any progress. In the end, No Place for Bravery just isn't evocative enough to make up for its nagging issues through the 10 or so hours it takes to beat. There's a moment here where Thorn is scared that his wife is in danger. You're sent on a mad dash back to your home, and all of the monsters you encounter go down in one hit, supposedly from your adrenaline. It's moments like these that hint at a kernel of something special. Unfortunately, this isn't something I can recommend to either fans of the genre or people looking to get into it.